At the very top of the world, where the snow is always soft and the stars shine like tiny diamonds, a flurry of excitement was in the air. In the bustling heart of the North Pole, every single reindeer was practicing for the biggest, most important night of the year. They leaped into the sky, their hooves thudding against the clouds, their laughter echoing through the frosty air. Every reindeer was getting ready. Well, almost every reindeer. Tucked away behind a big, scratchy bale of hay was a small reindeer named Nibble. He watched the others soar, their figures dark against the moonlit sky. He was smaller than the rest, and his antlers hadn't quite grown into their full glory yet. He watched as the lead reindeer called out, "All right, everyone, final flight test. Let's see those powerful glides." One by one, the reindeer took off. They swooped and swirled, creating beautiful patterns in the night. Their movements were graceful, confident, and strong. But Nibble stayed right where he was, frozen behind the hay. He tried to lift his hooves, to imagine himself up there with them, but his legs felt like they were made of stone. The other reindeer didn't seem to notice him, lost in their joyful practice. Later that evening, long after the others had gone to rest, Nibble was still in the stable. The air was quiet, filled only with the soft rustle of hay and the distant chime of workshop bells. He whispered to himself, his voice barely a breath in the cold air, "I'm just too small. I'm too slow. I'm just too scared." He looked down at his own reflection in a bucket of water. He didn't see a magnificent sleigh-puller. He just saw a little reindeer who was afraid of falling. But he wasn't entirely alone. Standing quietly in the shadows of the stable doorway was Santa Claus himself. He had seen Nibble hiding, had heard his quiet, sad words. He walked over, his big boots making soft crunches in the straw, and sat down beside the small reindeer. He didn't say anything for a moment, just looked up at the stars through the stable window. Then, in his warm, gentle voice, he said, "You know, Nibble, some of the kindest and most soft hearts often hide the strongest wings." Nibble looked up at him, his big, dark eyes full of doubt. Santa just smiled, giving him a comforting pat on the head before heading back to his workshop, leaving Nibble alone with his thoughts. Christmas Eve arrived with a howl. A fierce, swirling blizzard descended upon the North Pole, unlike any Santa had seen in 100 years. The wind roared like a hungry beast, and the snow fell so thick it was like flying through a giant pillow. Up in the sky, the sleigh was in trouble. The wind tossed it from side to side, and the magical navigation light at the front of the sleigh flickered, and then went out. One of the elves, clinging tightly to a stack of presents, shouted over the wind, "Santa, we're flying blind." One of the elves, clinging tightly to a stack of presents, shouted over the wind, "We can't see past the clouds." Panic began to creep into the sleigh. How would they deliver the presents if they couldn't find their way? It was then that something strange began to happen. Nibble, who had been brought along just in case an extra hoof was needed, felt a strange tingling sensation on his nose. He looked down and saw it a soft, gentle, blue light was starting to glow, getting brighter and brighter with every beat of his worried heart. The light wasn't red and flashy. It was calm and steady, like a little piece of the clear winter sky. Santa turned, his eyes widening as he saw the beautiful blue glow cutting through the swirling snow. He looked right at Nibble, his voice full of hope. "Nibble, that light, it's perfect. Would you lead us?" Nibble trembled. Him lead the sleigh? The scared little reindeer who couldn't even join the flight test. He looked at the worried faces of the elves, at Santa's trusting eyes, and then at the blinding snowstorm ahead. He took a deep breath, and for the first time, he didn't think about being too small or too slow. He just thought about the children waiting for Christmas. He gave a small, determined nod. With a newfound courage, Nibble moved to the very front of the team. He took another deep breath and launched himself into the storm. His blue nose cut through the darkness like a beacon, a steady, unwavering guide. "Follow me," he shouted, his voice no longer a whisper, but strong and clear against the wind. The other reindeer, amazed, fell into formation behind him. He flew with a purpose he'd never felt before. The storm raged around them, but Nibble's light was their anchor. It was as if the blizzard itself parted for him. Slowly but surely, as they followed his glowing nose, the sky behind them began to clear. They broke through the last of the storm clouds into a calm, starry night. Christmas was delivered safely. Every present found its home, all thanks to the small reindeer who had been too afraid to fly. As the sun began to rise on Christmas morning, they landed back at the North Pole, exhausted but triumphant. The lead reindeer walked over to Nibble. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with respect. "You saved Christmas." Nibble looked at his reflection in a shiny ornament on the sleigh. The blue glow on his nose had faded to a soft pulse, and he smiled. "I just stopped hiding," he said quietly. And so, the lesson from that snowy Christmas Eve is one we should all remember. True bravery isn't always loud and flashy. It doesn't need to roar. Sometimes, the greatest bravery is quiet, gentle, and glowing, just waiting for its moment to shine. Thank you for watching.